In a kingdom beneath the waves, where only women rule, a sacred law guides the throne. But when envy seeps into bloodlines and a sister craves a crown never meant for her, destinies are stolen, and kingdoms fall into darkness. This is the story of a mermaid queen betrayed, a stolen heir, and the dangerous truth that refused to stay buried. You're watching our KO Tales. Subscribe and join the family.
In the underwater kingdom of Theasser, no man has ever sat on the throne. For generations, the sea gods have chosen one queen to rule, and that queen never marries. Instead, once in her lifetime, a man is chosen by the gods to lie with the queen. From that sacred union, a daughter is always born, the next ruler of the tides. Has always been so, till now. Queen Selene ruled Theasser with the grace of the sea herself. She was wise, loved by the people, and soon expecting a daughter, Theasser's future queen. But Queen Selene had a younger sister, Lady Morana, ambitious, cunning, and dangerous. Morana loathed the tradition that denied her power. She believed the gods had made a mistake. She should have been queen. The sea would soon tremble under her scheme. The moon hung like a silent witness over the waters the night Queen Selene went into labor. But she wasn't the only one. In the lowest quarters of the palace, hidden from the splendor above, a maid named Alia let out a desperate cry. Her body convulsed, muscles clenched, and as the tide whispered beyond the palace walls, she brought forth a child into the world. Son. The moment his cry filled the chamber, Morana stepped forward, eyes gleaming with cold satisfaction. "It is done," she murmured. "Perfect timing." Alia, drenched in sweat and barely able to lift her head, cradled her newborn son, her hands trembling. "Please, just let me be." But Morana was already moving. Like a specter, she drifted toward the royal chambers, her steps silent, precise. The guards had been dismissed under mysterious orders, and the healers were tending to other royal tasks. The queen, weakened from childbirth, lay in her grand bed, breathing heavily, her arms wrapped protectively around the newborn princess, the rightful heir. She never saw Morana coming. The princess did not even get to cry out. With swift, practiced hands, Morana pried the infant from the queen's grasp, moving in calculated silence. Selene barely stirred, too lost in the haze of exhaustion. Then, with equal precision, Morana completed the switch. She placed Alia's son where the princess had been, settling the boy into the silken cradle before stepping back. Flawless exchange. Nobody would suspect. A male heir born to the queen. It would shake the kingdom, defy the divine law. But Morana's ambitions did not care for laws. The true heir was now in her hands. Swiftly, she returned to Alia's chamber, where the maid lay weak, struggling to keep her eyes open. "You will take the princess and disappear," Morana instructed, forcing the newborn girl into Alia's arms. "Your son will take her place." Alia gasped, her fragile body trembling under the weight of terror. "No, I cannot." Morana's grip turned cruel, nails digging into Alia's wrist. "You have no choice. Do this, or your son dies." Alia looked at the baby. The innocent child queen had just birthed. And then with the princess in her arms, unaware of the fate awaiting her, she knew she had no escape. With shaking limbs, she carried the infant deep into the palace tunnels, staggering beneath the crushing betrayal. The cave. That was where Morana ordered her to go next. The moment Alia stepped into the cavern, she knew. She had been condemned. Morana stood waiting. Her dagger gleamed in the dim light. "Give me the princess," Morana demanded. Alia hesitated, and that hesitation sealed her fate. "You were never meant to live," Morana murmured, stepping forward. "Loose ends need cutting." Alia's breath turned ragged. Panic clawed at her throat. One chance, only one. She turned toward the deep crevice where the ocean whispered beyond the cave wall. Passage to the unknown. She clutched the infant tight, tears spilling onto the child's soft skin. Then, with the last of her strength, she hurled the princess into the rift. Morana lunged forward, a vicious scream ripping from her throat. Too late. The ocean had already claimed the child, sweeping her into rolling waves, carrying her far beyond Morana's grasp. Alia turned, barely standing. But Morana was faster. Steel plunged into Alia's chest, ripping through flesh. She collapsed, her gaze locked on the distant waters. The princess was gone, and Morana, furious and powerless, could only hope the child drowned before anyone ever learned the truth. When Queen Selene awoke, pale and weak from labor, she was told she had given birth to a boy. "A boy," she whispered, her voice trembling. "That's not possible." The royal court fell into silence. For the first time in centuries, the sea gods had broken tradition. Queen wept. The council was stunned. A male heir meant chaos, confusion, questions of divine betrayal. Lady Morana, masked in fake grief, pretended to console her sister. The kingdom was in chaos. Never in their sacred history had a queen given birth to a male. Whispers swirled like ocean currents in the coral corridors of the palace. The council was summoned. Even they were speechless. A male heir. It was a sacred impossibility. But no one dared to accuse the gods. What no one knew was that miles away, beyond the kingdom's edge, a poor fisherman named Baby from the nearby village of Enchita Waters had just returned from casting his nets when he heard soft cries carried on the tide. At first, he thought it was a siren's lure. But as he waded into the moonlit lagoon, he saw something swaddled in glowing kelp, a newborn mermaid, floating in a small enchanted seashell cradle. "The gods have sent her to me," the fisherman whispered in awe. He took the baby into his home, named her Neri after the sea god who blesses their waters. He never knew that the baby he found was the true heir to the mermaid kingdom. Back at the palace, the council took a final decision. Instead of dethroning Queen Selene, the people did the unthinkable. They stood with their queen. The high priest declared, "The people shall beg the gods for mercy, and a second chance. Let the queen lie with the chosen man once more." A second union. This had never been done before. But the love for Queen Selene was stronger than fear. The people were willing to bend the heavens for her. And that terrified Lady Morana.
"People of Theasser, the gods have tested us. A son has been born where daughters once reigned. But we will not fear. We will appeal not from weakness, but from hope. Let the festival of appeal be sea."
A date was chosen for the festival of appeal for the gods to grant the queen a second chance to lay with a chosen merman to bear a daughter who will be the heir to the throne of Theasser. From the early glow of morning, Theasser came alive. The kingdom shimmered with celebration and solemnity. Coral streets were lined with sea lanterns that glowed in hues of indigo and gold. Children tied glowing kelp ribbons to drift currents, sending floating prayers to the gods above. Fishermen from the outer trenches swam in, bringing shell fruits and rare pearls. Merchants closed their shops. Warriors polished their blades, not for battle, but for the dance of devotion, an age-old tradition performed by the bravest of maidens. The women of the royal household prepared sacred herbs in carved shell bowls, placing them at every corner of the grand plaza, where the ceremony would take place. The plaza, an ancient space carved into the heart of the coral reef, had not seen a gathering this grand in over a century. As the festival began, chants filled the water. Drums made of stingray skin echoed through the deep, their rhythm mimicking the heartbeat of the ocean itself. Maidens in flowing garments of white and blue danced in spirals, their movements symbolizing life, fertility, and divine mercy. Elders sang ancient hymns that spoke of queens who birthed kingdoms, of the sea's favor, and of women chosen by destiny. The people knelt, eyes turned upward to the shimmering veil where sea met sky. Then came the moment. Queen Selene, dressed in ceremonial robes woven with moon coral and pearl threads, stepped into the center of the plaza. The crowd silenced. Even the sea seemed to pause. She raised her hands and knelt before the sacred pearl of petition, whispering a plea known only to her heart. The whole kingdom waited for a sign, flicker, a glow, an answer. They didn't know that in the shadows, watching it all, stood her sister, Lady Morana, cloaked in darkness, her eyes cold and unforgiving. She had no intention of letting the gods rewrite fate. But for now, the people still believed, Queen still hoped, and Theasser held its breath. The ocean was eerily still that night. Queen Selene sat alone in her chambers, wrapped in a robe woven from moon-kissed kelp, rocking gently in her coral chair. The soft hum of the waves against the palace walls usually brought her comfort, but tonight her heart ached. She looked down at the baby boy sleeping in the seashell cradle beside her. Her fingers trembled. "I dreamed of her," she whispered. "A daughter with eyes like mine. I believe the gods will be merciful and accept our appeal and grant me another chance to have an heir." Then came a gentle knock on the door. It was Morana, elegant as ever, cloaked in royal blue, holding a golden goblet that shimmered with enchantment. "Sister," she said sweetly, "you haven't eaten. You must regain your strength." Selene smiled faintly. "You care for me now, Morana." Morana stepped inside, her voice as smooth as tidewater. "I've always cared. And tonight I've brought your favorite coral wine." She handed her the goblet. Selene took it slowly, eyeing the surface. For a moment, something flickered in her mind. Doubt, maybe, or instinct. But she was tired, worn down by heartbreak. And her sister's smile seemed warm, genuine. She drank. The poison burned like fire beneath her ribs. Her eyes widened. The goblet fell, shattering on the seashell floor. Selene clutched her chest, gasping. What have you done?" Morana stepped closer, her voice cold and unshaken. "You were never meant to rule, Selene. The crown should have been mine." "You killed our blood," Selene rasped, tears spilling as her vision blurred. "My daughter." Morana's gaze hardened. "She was a mistake." Selene fell to her knees, struggling for breath. "The gods will see you." Her last words faded into silence. Morana stood above her, watching her sister's body grow still. No sorrow, no regret, only satisfaction. The next morning, the entire kingdom of Theasser fell into mourning. Bells chimed beneath the sea. Schools of fish wept in swirls. The sacred jellyfish of mourning floated near the palace gates. The council, stunned by the sudden death, declared the infant boy unfit for the throne, an unnatural heir, born against centuries of tradition. Morana, now cloaked in black coral robes, stood tall before them. "He will be raised among the palace servants." The gods made their choice. "And so must we." "And the crown?" one elder dared to ask. Morana turned slowly, a serpent's smile spreading across her lips. "Belongs to me now." And just like that, Princess Morana was crowned queen. But while the kingdom wept, and a stolen boy who was swapped slept in a servant's arms, to be raised as a commoner, somewhere beyond the palace, the true heir drifted in the waters of fate, alive, unaware, and destined to rise. The market square of Enchita Waters was alive with color and song. Coral vendors called out from their seashell booths. Children weaved between seaweed stalls chasing starfish, and the rhythm of life flowed as steadily as the warm ocean current. But then the scream. A mother's cry pierced the crowd. "Help! Someone help my child!" All eyes turned toward the open tide pool at the edge of the village, where a tiny mermaid child had slipped through the coral edge and been caught in a violent undercurrent. She thrashed, panicking. Her tiny arms barely kept her afloat. Several villagers dove in. Strong swimmers, seasoned pearl divers, and even the bravest guards of Umizu. But the tide was too fast, too unpredictable, pulling the child farther and farther into the deep. Not even the most experienced among them could reach her. Then came a voice. "Move back." 'Twas Neri, clad in a simple kelp-woven wrap, her wild hair tangled with shells. She stepped forward with eyes glowing like the sunrise above the sea. She raised her arms, her fingers moving like a conductor before a great symphony. The ocean answered. A sudden stillness overtook the waters, and then a rush. 2 dolphins darted through the waves, weaving through coral and current with impossible speed. Schools of silver fish parted to clear their path. The dolphins reached the child just before she went under. Gently, they lifted her between them and swam her back to shore. Gasps erupted around the square. The child coughed and cried and was alive. The crowd was stunned. The mother wept as she cradled her daughter, dropping to her knees before Neri. "You saved her. You saved my baby. Thank you, thank you." But whispers began. She spoke to the dolphins. The sea obeyed her. Who is she really? Neri felt their eyes on her, not just grateful but fearful, curious, uneasy. She turned and hurried away, heart pounding. At the edge of the village, hidden in the coral thickets, stood a modest underwater cottage, shaped from driftwood and whale bones. Inside, Boyo the fisherman stirred a pot of seaweed broth. Gray now streaked his beard, and his once broad shoulders had softened, but his eyes remained sharp. When Neri swam in, he looked up. He saw the worry in her face. "What did you do?" he asked, already dreading the answer. She hesitated. "A child was drowning. I had to do something. No one could reach her. I called the dolphins." Boyo stood up, his voice rising. "Neri, how many times have I warned you? Never use your powers in front of others." "I couldn't just watch her die," she said quietly. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "People talk. You think they won't? That display, you summoned the sea like it was yours. They'll fear you. Or worse. They'll come for you." She looked down. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." He softened, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I know. But this world doesn't forgive what it doesn't understand." But the whispers didn't stay in Enchita waters. They traveled on tides and tongues, across fishing boats, through reef villages, and into the ears of pearl merchants. In a matter of days, word reached the gates of Theasser. The once mighty mermaid city had fallen into quiet despair. Famine clawed at its edges. Fish had vanished. Coral farms yielded little. The people muttered behind closed doors, their loyalty to Queen Morana fraying. When the queen heard of a mysterious girl in a distant village who could command sea creatures, her heart stopped. She stood in her obsidian chamber, gazing into a kelp mirror. Her voice trembled not with fear, but calculation. "A girl who commands the sea. Could she be Igbo? That child could not have survived the ocean. She must have drowned and died." Still, doubt rippled across her mind. Her counsel was restless. The people hungered. The ocean itself no longer bent to her will. But this girl might change that. Deep beneath the sacred chambers of Theasser, the Council of Elders convened in the sacred chamber, a hollowed-out dome of pearl and obsidian, etched with symbols of the gods they had once trusted. But now, the gods had gone silent. Elder Bako slammed his coral staff against the floor. "It has been 3 moon cycles since Queen Selene's death," he said gravely. 3 moons of silence from the gods. Elder Annika shifted uneasily, her long tail coiling beside her. Not a single sign. Not in dreams. Not in the deep currents. No vision. No chosen mate for Queen Morana. Without a mate there is no heir. And without an heir. She trailed off, but the weight of her words was heavy. Elder Jahi narrowed his eyes. "We crowned Morana too quickly." Selene's body had barely returned to the ocean's embrace, and already her sister sat upon the throne. "The people grow restless," Annika added. "Fish no longer gather in the reefs. Crops from the coral farms are failing. The tides feel wrong." Bako sighed deeply. "The sea is grieving. Perhaps the gods are punishing us. Perhaps Morana was never their chosen." A sharp intake of breath swept the chamber. "We made the decision in haste," Jahi said. "Selene's death shook us. But Morana, she lacks her sister's grace, her wisdom. And now the gods turn their backs." Before another word could be said, a young scout swam into the chamber, his eyes wide with urgency. "Elders, forgive me, but there is news. From Enchita waters." Bako frowned. "Speak." "A girl. A stranger to the village. She saved a drowning child. But not with her hands, with the sea. She summoned dolphins. The water stilled at her command." The council members sat up stunned. "She commanded the sea?" Anika asked. "Yes, elder. The people say she spoke to the ocean like it knew her voice." Silence fell again. Only now it was thick with dread. Bako turned slowly toward the sacred wall where Queen Celine's image was etched in shell and gold. Only 2 in the bloodline were ever said to command the sea. The first queen, and Celine. Jahi's voice dropped. Anika clutched her chest. Bako stared into the dark. "If this girl is of royal blood, if the gods have chosen her." Long pause. "Then Morana's crown may be built on a lie." Far below the royal chambers, in the damp stone corridors where the slaves slept, Cato dragged a basket of sea salts toward the boiling rooms. He was tall now, broad-shouldered, sharp-eyed, with a quiet grace that unsettled the guards. Born into the palace, yet raised among the lowest. Once, the queen had announced him unfit for the throne. "No man shall ever sit on Theasser's throne," she declared coldly. "It is against our traditionals. Let him grow where he belongs among the slaves." So Cato grew in shadows. The slaves whispered about him. "He doesn't belong here. He is a rejected child. Maybe he was cursed." But Cato said nothing. He worked. He watched. And sometimes, he dreamed of a woman calling his name in a voice he didn't recognize. The obsidian pillars of Queen Morana's private hall glittered like midnight ice. She paced, tail flicking in agitated sweeps as her spymaster, an eel-thin merman named Zal, waited, head bowed. "Morana, low, urgent, tell me again. Every word." Zal. "Witnesses swear the girl lifted dolphins with a gesture, your majesty. They say the sea moved for her as it once moved for Queen Celine." Morana's breath snagged. For years the currents had resisted her. Fish schools fled the city. Coral crops withered. The gods were still punishing her, no matter how many sacrifices she ordered. Morana, whispering to herself, a daughter, forged by the sea itself. Impossible. Zal. Shall I dismiss the tale as superstition? Morana, hardening, no, find the girl. Bring her to me alive. Zal. Majesty. Morana. If she is who I fear, then there is trouble. 3 dawns later, Boyo stood at the cottage door, eyes narrowing at a swirl of distant shadows, armored riders on giant rays cresting the reef. Inside, Neri traced the shell bracelet she'd worn since infancy, a tiny emblem she'd always thought decorative, now throbbing like a heartbeat. Boyo, urgent, pack a satchel. We leave before the sun swell. Neri. Leave. The village is my home. Boyo. Home is where you're safe, child. Those guards aren't here to thank you for saving lives. They're here to claim you. She swallowed. Because of what I did. Boyo hesitated, then opened a cedar box from beneath the floorboards. Inside lay a faded scrap of royal cloth, stitched with Celine's crest. Boyo, soft, I found you with this. I never knew its meaning, until today. Neri's pulse hammered. Questions swarmed, but there was no time. Outside, villagers scattered as the black guard dismounted. Spears gleamed, eel leather capes snapped in the current. Captain Dravos. By order of Queen Morana, surrender the girl who commands the sea. Boyo pushed Neri toward the back entrance. Swim north. Follow the moon kelp forest. I'll hold them. Neri. I won't leave you. Boyo, smiling sadly. You're leaving for all of us. Go, little tide spark. Find the truth of who you are. The door shattered. Boyo met the first guard with his fishing gaff, buying precious seconds. Neri bolted into the kelp dusk, tears mixing with salt. Behind her, the clash of steel and a muffled cry ripped through the water. The ocean has chosen its champion. The hunt has begun. And far beneath the waves, the tide of truth rises, unstoppable,